Human trafficking is a form of modern slavery that often goes underreported and as a result is under-prosecuted in Australia. Human trafficking can be committed for a number of exploitative purposes, including forced labour, forced marriage, and sexual exploitation. Unlike historical slavery characterised by physical restraints and violence, modern slavery, especially in Australia, tends to be perpetrated through more discreet, coercive tactics. These tactics include debt bondage, passport hostages, and restricted movement and access to services. Debt bondage is where a perpetrator of trafficking creates a false and often exorbitant debt that the victim is required to pay back, often through servitude or other financial exploitation. Debt amounts are often large, which, coupled with the victim's vulnerability and often low earning potential, make them near impossible to repay, perpetuating the cycle of exploitation. Another coercive method used by perpetrators is confiscating a victim's passport or other personal documentation, so that the victim is unable to leave the custody of the perpetrator. Some perpetrators also commit visa fraud on behalf of their victims to de-incentivise approaching authorities. While instances of being imprisoned are rare, there are cases of victims being deprived of keys to their own accommodation or forbidden to be in public without a chaperone. Some victims are also deprived of mobile phone or internet access. These conditions effectively create imprisonment in the absence of physical restraint. According to Anti-Slavery Australia, 47% of human trafficking referrals to police are instances of forced marriage. Human trafficking for forced labour represents approximately 25% of referrals, while 13% are cases of sexual exploitation. In all of these instances, a combination of coercive tactics, including debt bondage and passport hostages, are employed by perpetrators to retain control over their victims. Particular groups of people are more vulnerable to human trafficking and other forms of modern slavery than others. These vulnerable groups include international students, backpackers, asylum seekers, and migrants on limited working visas. Members of these groups may be additionally vulnerable due to cultural and linguistic barriers and a limited understanding of the Australian legal system and their rights within it. These factors also contribute to the invisibility of these victims and the lack of attention from authorities, which in turn exacerbates their vulnerability. While understanding these general vulnerabilities and characteristics is useful for identifying potential cases of human trafficking, it is important to remember that all cases involving human trafficking are complex, unique, and nuanced to ensure that victims don't continue to slip through the cracks of identification, protection, and prevention.